Danton by Frank Dwyer, World Leaders Past and Present Series, Book Review. So this is another book in the World Leaders Past and Present series. I'll link down in the description below to my introduction to the series, but basically there are a series of history books on world leaders that seem to be written for a junior high school or high school library. This is the second one I've read. The first one was on Robespierre, which I mentioned in my review. Got a little bit dense in the prose and got a little bit too into the complicated politics of the French Revolution. This one on Danton, of course, is on the exact same subject, the French Revolution, but it reads a lot easier. Maybe because the author, Frank Dwyer, is a literature professor, so he can write better. I don't know. But it's evident right from the first paragraph that this is a reader who knows how to this is a writer who knows how to convey information and can convey it in a way that entices the reader. So quoting from the first paragraph, "An ingenious and fatal machine casts its long shadow over the pages of this story. It has a tall, strong wooden frame that is grooved along the inside edges to permit the raising and lowering of a heavy blade. The blade is raised by a system of lead weights and pulleys and is designed to come down quickly, hurled to the base of the frame by its own weight. A movable wooden plank, large enough to lie on, is fitted onto the wooden frame to the base, where two semicircle pieces of wood, the lunette, can open and shut to admit a medium-sized object and hold it in place in the path of a blade. It is a machine for cutting off heads." End quote. The book gives a brief but fascinating biographical information about Danton, as well as his shifting alliances. He is portrayed in this book as an opportunist. He began his legal career with a speech against revolution. "Woe to those who provoke revolutions. Woe to those who make them." But when he perceived that the power of Louis XVI's court was finished, he cast his lot in with the revolution. The author often contrasts Danton, who entered the revolution out of slightly opportunistic reasons, with Robespierre, who entered it for idealistic reasons. Quote, "Danton and Robespierre were both brilliant and courageous revolutionary leaders, but their personalities were very different. Robespierre, known as the Incorruptible, was famed for his famed virtuousness and purity, was cold, hard, distant, a man of ideals and intellect. Danton was warm, easygoing, sociable, a man of passions and heart. For now, these natural rivals were uneasy allies in the revolution." That's from page 49. The book also talks about Danton's taking bribes. Quote, "The reality of this bribe-taking may not be quite as bad as it sounds to the law-abiding citizens of a stable government. Robespierre was called the Incorruptible because his integrity was so unique. No one would ever have called Danton the Incorruptible, and he probably would not have appreciated it if they did." End quote. I found that part a little bit funny. He wouldn't even have appreciated being called the Incorruptible. Now, the author does make clear that there's no actual concrete proof that Danton actually ever took bribes. But there's a lot of circumstantial evidence, and the author does get into some of that. There is also a very interesting allegation that Danton had bought his famous military victory against the Prussian Duke of Brunswick with a bribe of the blue diamond of the golden fleece. Also, the interesting connection that Danton, the Duke of Brunswick, and many other leading men involved in the battle belonged to the secret society of the Masons. Again, there's no hard proof of any bribe or any secret agreement, but there's a lot of interesting circumstantial evidence. When Danton became a threat to Robespierre, he was executed by the Revolutionary Tribunal as part of the Reign of Terror. The irony is that Danton was responsible for helping to create both the tribunal and the terror, and then eventually he became its most famous victim. Quoting from the book again, "The deputies were forced to create their own Frankenstein, a monster that would eventually murder many of them. Danton's repentance came too late. 'God and my fellow men forgive me,' he said after his fall. 'I never meant the tribunal to become the scourge of humanity it has. All I wanted was to prevent any recurrence of the September massacres.' He hoped that the Revolutionary Tribunal would replace the unpredictable mob as a protector of the nation from domestic enemies, and believed that the tribunal would help to restore order and calm in Paris. Instead, he learned that he and his fellow deputies had given the party, or the individual, in power a swift and efficient mechanism for sending opponents to the guillotine." End quote, and that was from pages 84 and 85 of this book.